You are listening to Conversations on the Way with your host, Nana Jumpy. We start our first show of the year in conversation with the ever bold and brilliant Cliff Albright. Cliff Albright is co-founder of a Black Voters Matter Fund, an organization dedicated to expanding Black voter engagement and increasing progressive power through movement building. He also hosts a weekly radio show in Atlanta and has served as an instructor of African American studies at several universities. Greetings, Cliff. Wonderful to have you on. It's been a minute since we've had you on this show, but thanks so much for doing this with us.
No, thank you. It's always an honor and a pleasure.
So much to talk about. I want to start with the work we're doing in this election year in the United States to create this educated and engaged base of community members who are ready to push policies that support equity, justice, democracy, right? All of the things we know we need and that we deserve as people in this country and on this planet. It's not easy, though. It's not easy.
No, ma'am.
It's not easy at all. What are the priorities that we should be looking at as we're looking at this work, right? I mean, Baji's looking at this work, Black Alliance for Just Immigration. Obviously, we have been graciously partnered with you and Black Voters Matter on how we do this. And it just seems like it gets harder and harder. What should we be focusing on so we're not just scattered in this moment?
Yeah, so I think, we got to be focused on a couple of things, right? And sometimes people refer to it as like a push-pull type thing. You got two different dynamics going on in two different directions. On the one hand, we've got a range of issues that we need to be concerned about because because they're issues that our communities care about. And some of them are economic, some of them deal with education, some of them deal with civil rights and voting rights within that, right? There are some issues that we want progress on. We want progress on student debt cancellation. We want progress on police violence and police accountability. We want progress on economics, both from an employment issue and a wage issue, but even from business development, right? And so there's all these, education, all these things that there's the status in our communities of our community infrastructure, right? And the good news is that there's actually been some stuff done on that over the past 3.5 years, right? I wasn't a Biden fan in 2020 during the primaries, right? There were a couple other people that I definitely wanted more, but we got to kind of admit that there's been like some legislative stuff done over these 3.5 years, including infrastructure, which benefits Black communities, and including student debt cancellation. Not as much that we would like to see, but still historic levels of debt. I know people that call me up, send me emails like almost every other week, talk about, I logged in, my debt is down to zero, it got canceled. So it's happening, even though there have been forces trying to keep it from happening, right? And we could go issue by issue, lowest Black unemployment ever, right? We could go issue by issue, HBCU funding and all this stuff. So there's a bunch of issues. And again, that doesn't mean that we've gotten everything that we want, right? We still don't have a police accountability federal legislation, whether it's the George Floyd Act or some of the other acts that we've been trying to push. But we've had action done on criminal justice reform at the federal level. No knock warrants, chokeholds, bans, right? The people that murdered Breonna Taylor indicted, right? I mean, these are things. Department of Justice doing like a series of litigations and consent decrees with police departments that have been out of control. Like that's been done. So we haven't gotten everything that we want, but we've gotten some stuff done. And part of our priorities is to talk about these issues and what's been done, not because we're trying to be cheerleaders for anybody in particular, but because these are our issues. Like these are some things that we said were important before the last election and that we wanted to see some stuff done on. And guess what? Some stuff's gotten done. So there's that piece of it, right? But then there's the other piece of it, which is, yeah, we got these people out here and they're doing some stuff and some of it's good and some of it's not finished and whatever. But then you got these other people out here who are literally running on anti-blackness, like literally running on anything anti-black. Black history they want to get rid of, right? You just saw them cancel the black woman president of Harvard. They got rid of affirmative action. They're attacking DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. They blocked money for black farmers. They actually fought against the student debt cancellation explicitly because they said too many black people would benefit from it. Like, this is what they said, right? And so when you look policy after policy, living wage, blocking that, right? Even in situations where our cities, our voters and our city elected officials have tried to get it done. So on issue after issue, they are literally running on anti-blackness, right? And many of those issues aren't just civil rights issues. Those are what? Those are cold, hard cash issues, right? Economic, affirmative action, DEI, student debt cancellation, cost of insulin, that's a health issue, and economic issues. Like these are all issues that, in addition to being civil rights issues, are issues that hit us in our pockets. And so part of our priorities has to be to expose all of that. So to talk about what's been done and what it is that we want to see done, but also be very clear that even if that first piece isn't everything that we want it to be, we got to be clear that there's some folks that are running on anti-blackness, that are anti-us, that they use us to motivate their base. And at the end of the day, this is not a referendum about how much we like one person or one party or whatever. It is a choice. It is a choice between some folks that have gotten some stuff done and still got more to do, and some folks that are literally running on being anti-black.
Thank you. I mean, it's so interesting. And, again, really appreciate your perspective because, Nana Jumpy, I'm like, look, I'm mad at these people.
Mm-hmm.
I got a long list of reasons I'm mad at them. I look at guys every day and I'm mad. I'm mad. I'm looking at how they're willing to trade migrants for Ukraine and Israel. I'm mad. Like I'm seeing... these spaces in which I'm like, you just don't even have to do this. Like you're continuing things that Trump was doing, and I don't understand where it is. And at the same time, clearly, as you pointed out, it's not that I'm not up here. I ain't Ice Cube. Like I'm not running up here saying, look, we've got to now roll with Trump or something and have the Republican Party do what it needs to do. Because they're, as you pointed out, it is clearly a situation in which there are people who have decided that they're running everything back. And I think, we're looking at polls, we're looking at conversation. Maybe some of it is this disinformation that you've talked about previously, but I see the cracks. Like I see that people are saying, hey, this is not what we were looking for. This is not what we were hoping for.
Yeah.
And, we may not be about to vote for the other guy, but we may not vote at all. Right. If I'm going to have to stand 20 hours, I want to have a reason to stand 20 hours. And so, I think it's like it takes two to tango. So on the one hand, looking first at those who want this coalition that I've described to hold and to defeat those folks that you talked about that are anti-Black and anti-everything. Mm-hmm. What do those folks need to do? What do these party folks need to do in order to hold this coalition together? And then let's talk about what, the coalition of voters need to do. But first, what is the responsibility of the people who want folks to put them in office?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first responsibility, and you hit it on the head when you were talking about some of the issues, like Gaza, right? They've got to continue. They can't rest on their laurels and be like, hey, we passed infrastructure, so, vote for us and that's it. Or, they can't rest on the 2, 3, 4, whatever number of good things that have been done. because I say this all the time. Sometimes I get frustrated because every time like they take a step forward and do something that's really positive, then they come back and do something like really stupid, right? And I shouldn't laugh because in the case of Gaza, it's not funny, right? Like we are literally watching, and many of the people that I talk to, many of the Black voters that we talk to, are watching other brown skinned folk being bombed and killed on a daily basis. Right. Seeing children, Palestinian children. I saw a stat the other day where 10 children lose limbs every day or something like that. Right.
Yep.
And and Black folks, like we resonate with this, right? Because we've been there. Like we've been in that situation of going up against forces with overwhelming power and nobody listening to our story, and like we resonate with that. In fact, I saw a stat just today that said 40% of Black folks are against the way the administration has handled the war. But interestingly enough, 50% of Latinx voters are against it, right? Which it's kind of surprising, right? When you think about, because usually Black folks are more progressive, like basically on issue after issue, right? But why is there this 10% difference where even more Latinx folks are mad about the administration's handling of Gaza than Black folks are? And I think when you peel the banana, right? Because at the end of the day, what is in the background of a lot of Latinx communities? Indigenous populations.
Right.
And so exactly. You got people from indigenous populations that are seeing another indigenous group that is being bombed into oblivion. And so to answer your question, they have got to continue, not even on the issues that they've already done, not even on domestic issues, but even on an issue like this. And some people are skeptical. They say, oh, well, nobody's actually going to vote based on Gaza. And I've been reminding people presidencies have been lost over wars, right? LBJ could tell you something about that. Bush could tell you something about that. Presidencies have been lost. Jimmy Carter could tell you something about that. Presidencies have been lost over some international global affairs. And so the first thing that they need to do to answer your questions is to not take certain issues for granted, to not take our views on certain issues for granted, to not act like we don't have any choices. Because at the end of the day, and you said it, I said earlier, it's a choice, right? But it's not just a two-way choice. It's a choice between this group, and actually even some other candidates, and we could get into that later on. But at a minimum, it's a three-way choice of this group, or I'm gonna just stay out of it. And when you have angered people because of policies, whether domestic or international, so much that some people, and especially younger Black voters, because I say it all the time, some older Black voters, that are mad about the war, as we get closer, they'll get more pragmatic, and they might hold their nose and still, vote a certain way. But younger Black voters, like when you piss them off, it's done. Right? Like they not just gonna be wake up a week or two or a month later and be like, okay, I guess I'll know. When you burn that bridge, it's burnt. And so, so yes, to your point, that part of what they need to do is to not take our votes and our positions and our issues for granted, whether domestic or international. And then the other thing, which kind of goes right along with it, is that they've got to put some resources into this. Like, you said it in Georgia and other states in 2020, like that work wasn't just done like automatically. Like demographics ain't destiny. Like people have to go out and do this work. We have to go out and knock on doors and make phone calls and send text messages and print flyers and drive around in a big old black bus that we call the Black Bus in America. But I mean, all of our organizations, not just us, like we put time and resources into this. And so, progressive funders, the party, like they've got to invest in the organizations that do this work, because it ain't free to do this work. We do it because it's important to our communities, but at the end of the day, we need some support to go out here and do all this work that we do, especially in the face of the voter suppression that you mentioned earlier. So but what's been happening has been the reverse. As our jobs are getting harder, to reach out to our folks and have these conversations with our folks. As our job is getting harder and as voter suppression has gotten worse, we've actually seen resources going down ever since the 2020 election. And I'm not sure where it's going to wind up in 24. So they can't take us for granted either in terms of our policies, nor can they take us for granted in terms of like what they invest in our communities and the organizations that do this work, in Black-owned media, right? That is an important vehicle for getting messages to us. Like they've got to invest in us if they want us to turn out.
Absolutely. That point. Man, I love talking to you. Thank you for that point, because it is actually shocking, the difference in investment. Remember 2020? And you can't tell me it was just because of the census. No, come on now. I remember 2020, and I remember the push. I remember, for organizations such as ours, where we're trying to, it was like, hey, just again, nonpartisan, just getting people connected, engaged, activated. There were resources for languages and resources for, getting people on the ground, and resources for, we ain't got one call. I mean, there's nothing. Drive. If it weren't for Black Voters Matter, we're just nothing. Really, I'm serious. The comparison, and I'm asking other people, and other people are like, yeah, I don't know what's going on here. And I think it partially goes, Cliff, to the fight. So I am a civil rights, criminal defense, human rights attorney, and our people want to see you fight.
Yes.
We know that we may not win. We know that. We're not confused about the fact that every time you go to court, you're supposed to win. Every time you do something, you're supposed to win. We know that you're not going to win every fight, but we want to see the fight. I guess part of what I think is missing, to your point, is the fight, right? And so it's easy for disinformation to come in. Nobody see the fight. If people saw the fight, it would be hard for you to say that they haven't done this and they haven't done that, because people would see it happening. But if everything is like in a Capitol building or in a back room or in these spaces that people don't see, it's like you go up to, take that Department of Justice and go right up into DeSantis land and say, no, that voter suppression won't happen here. Book banning, that won't happen here. We will tangle with you. We don't care if it goes to some SCOTUS and we lose. We gonna show you that we will tangle for you. I think that would make a big difference. It doesn't make up for genocide, but I think it would make a big difference for a lot of people if they saw the resources, if they saw the fight, if it wasn't like, you do the fight, Cliff, you do the fight, Latasha, but we're not going to give you much money and we ain't going to be part of the fight. That, I think, is part of the problem.
No, you hit it right on the head. We love a fighter, right? Who we love? We love Muhammad Ali, right? In that photo, standing over, right? Standing over somebody.
Exactly. What's my name?
Right. We love Serena shouting in the middle of the match, right? And pumping her. We love Tiger even, right? Even Tiger, Combination Tiger. We love Tiger when he pumped that fist, right? We want to see some fight, and it's not even just a sports thing. Like in our politics, we like folks, Marion Barry, for everything that he did.
Oh my goodness.
They loved him.
About to mention him.
Yes. They loved him. Why? Because he was a fighter, right? He may have been some other stuff too, but Black folks loved him because he was a fighter from the days of SNCC to the days of DC, right? And so we love when people will fight for us. Even when you're doing some good stuff, if you're just doing some good stuff, but we don't see the fight, then sometimes we're like, well, I ain't really feeling that person, right? But we want to see you fight. We want to see you be willing to go even when the odds are against you. Then we got whole genres of Black lit and Black music that are based on just our ability to fight, even when we're up against odds. And so if you're going to be an elected official and that fight ain't clear, then you are absolutely right. Then we just not going to be feeling you. We might not even be able to put words to it, like why we ain't feeling you. But at the end of the day, we got to see you fight. We want to see that. There were a lot of young Black folks that were into Bernie in 2020. Why? Because he looked like a fighter. Like really, where you,
Because,
even if you
he
didn't
was
like
an
him,
old white dude. He was an old
right?
white
Just
dude, but
old
they
white
were
dude.
down with him.
That's right. Because whether you liked it or not, you believed whatever the hell he said, and you believed that he was willing to fight for it. And so we
Right.
want that. And young black voters in particular need that. You got to be authentic and you got to have some fight in you. And if you ain't got those things, then, we just not going to be feeling it. And we might just decide to stay home. So you got to have the substance, right? Because the flip side is also true. We don't want somebody just pretending like they fighting and just going through the performance of fighting. We want to see some substance, but we want to see some substance and some fight. And when you can get those two things together and then message about that correctly, that's where the magic's at, And so that's what has to take place. Even when you look at like those confused folks that actually like Trump, and it's not 20%. I don't care what these polls be saying. Trump ain't getting 20% of black voters or whatever. But when you look at whatever that number is that actually like him, vote for him, whatever, what are the things that they often say? Oh, he speaks truth and he fights, right? And so you gotta be authentic and you gotta be willing to fight. In his case, he fights for his base. Right? He ain't fighting for us. He fights for his base, and he uses us as fodder. He uses us as the pawns to motivate his base, right? But his folks like him because they feel like he gonna fight for them. We need somebody that we feel like is gonna fight for us at least as much as he's gonna fight for his base.
Absolutely. And then there's a part that we also play. I mean, it's a difficult space for a person like me, right? Because I really am Cliff, a stomp down revolutionary. At the same time, I also, believe, as Malcolm teaches us, that it's all on the dry erase board by any means necessary, right? And so this is also a means, the late, great Chokwe Lumumba, one of my mentors, he ran for office. Now, you don't get more revolutionary than Chokwe. I dare you. Right. You know what I'm saying? That's right. And, ran for office, won a city council in Jackson, then became the mayor of Jackson before Chokwe Antar, his son. And so I know, right, that this is part of it. When I think Kwame Ture, when I think Fannie Lou Hamer, when I think Ella Baker, I'm not thinking no schleps. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are people who are really about it. So, and we're really looking at this as also part of the mechanisms of power, right? In other words, the power to control the material conditions of your community. As progressives, what do we need to do, right? For those folks that at least consider themselves progressive, some may be to the right, left of that, radical, etc. But for those of us who, it sometimes can be painful, what do we need to be thinking about as we look at this election year and whether we're opting in or opting out?
Yeah, I think we got to look at, I think it always starts with what our issues are, right? What our objectives are, right? And I think when we can do that and when we can run a tally, right? Like what is going to be the scenario that gets us closer to our objectives, recognizing, as we always say at Black Voters Matter, look, our liberation ain't coming from electoral politics, right? Black liberation, Black separation ain't coming from electoral politics. Right. And so, sometimes the best we get from it is harm reduction. Sometimes the best we get from it is, that we create a little bit of a liberated zone, a little bit of space. I always say every oppressive situation, there's some amount of space for creativity, for Black love, for Black joy. Even in the slave community, right? We still would create some little spaces that would be our space for some Black love, some Black joy, some Black traditions, jump in the broom, whatever it would be. In every oppressive situation, you got some space. Sometimes our goal with this electoral politics thing is just to create a little bit more space, a little bit more space that can then let us also do the other things that we need to be doing to get closer to actual liberation, right? And so we've got to be clear about what our objectives are, big picture objectives, little microcosm objectives like this policy, that policy, this position, that position. And as progressives, sometimes what that means is, there's there's some cost benefit analysis that we got to do, right? And we may not get all of, like I said, we're not going to get all of the liberation that we want or every single policy that we want. But what is the strategy? What is the option that gets us closer to the objectives that we do have? And that's gotta be a discussion, right? And people can come down on that in different ways. Some people may come down on that and say, well, the best scenario is that, I use my vote and I go for one of these other candidates, whether it's Cornel West or some other candidate, because that's gonna get me closer. And we can debate that. I don't think that's the case in a national election. I think that we have to build independent politics and we need to build third party politics. But there's a way that you do that where you build it from the ground up. Even when you look at like the Working Families Party and the strategy that they're following, right? But you can't just jump out there. You can't build a third party off a presidential election. Nobody done it, right? Ross Perot ain't do it. The Green Party, and you can't build a truly independent power at the national level by jumping into a president. It's got to be done from the ground up. So but these are the discussions that we got to have amongst our Black progressive community. And I know what I believe is the best scenario for us in terms of this upcoming 24 election, and not even just the presidential, but other elections taking place in the same year. But these are hard discussions. We got to have discussions about the issues, about the objectives, and about the strategies that we follow to get there. And folks who all love Black folks can disagree on some pieces of that, but we got to come together because at the end of the day, we all we got.
We is it. We is it. We is it. How do people support Black Voters Matter, who are part of All We Got, and the impactful work that you all are doing and continue to do?
Folks can check us out at on our website, Black Voters Matter Fund, FUND, Black Voters Matter Fund.org. All of our social media is Black Voters MTR, Black Voters MTR. That's all of our social. That's Facebook, Instagram, that thing that used to be known as Twitter that we trying to get off of because we ain't trying to support this South African white supremacists no more, right? Threads, but on YouTube, Black Voters MTR. You can check us out, follow us, check out where we're going to be, check out what we got going on. We do work in 25 states, nine states where we have staff, 14 or 15 states, including DC, which we are committed to helping become the 51st state because the denial of the right to vote to the 700,000 residents of DC is one of the oldest forms of voter suppression. So DC statehood. But we do work in about 14 or 15 other states where we don't have staff, where we support like partner organizations, a partner network. Sometimes it's a smaller footprint. But yeah, so 25 states that we touch one way or another with our support. When folks donate to us, if you go to our website and you donate to us, know this, that $1 out of every $2 that we spend goes right out the door supporting local groups, grassroots groups, groups like our friends that we love at Baji, right? Groups like NAACP chapters, churches, neighborhood associations, you name it, youth groups, senior groups, health groups, environmental justice groups. $1 out of every $2 that we spend, sometimes $1 out of every $3 is going right out the door to support those groups. Because guess what? Those are the folks that are closest to the problem, that are on the ground in our communities doing this work 365 days out the year.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate you. Appreciate the work that you do. Appreciate on all the levels, the organizing work, the advocacy work, the thinking work, the strategy work. Appreciate you, bro. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
No, thank you, sis. Love you.
That was Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund. If you've missed any part of this hour from 10 this morning for 90 days after that, just go to kpfk.org, scroll down to archives, and click on Conversations on the Way. You'll be able to listen to our show in its entirety. Follow me at Attorney Nana on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to my YouTube channel to hear the full interviews. Until there is at minimum, a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, we will continue to talk about the genocide there and the